This is vitamin video number 2 for my sports nutrition class. When we talk about the type of vitamins which are energy vitamins, they help the body make energy. We really mostly are talking about the first 3 of the B's, B1, B2, B3. And by the way, if you're curious, that these numbering, the numbering they have for B vitamins like A and D and E and K and B1, B2, B3, in theory, that's the order in which they were discovered, but it's not exactly correct. Some things were discovered out of order. And for example, vitamin K is not some letter in the alphabet order of finding that vitamin. K is like starts the word for clotting, I think, in Swedish or something like that. So that's why we call it vitamin K. So the first 3 B vitamins are energy vitamins. Thiamine is kind of a very interesting vitamin in that, in America, we don't see, for the vast majority of Americans, vitamin B1 deficiency, thiamine deficiency. Frankly, because remember, during the enrichment process, we enrich with all these processed grains, right? Cheez-Its from cereal to crackers. What are they enriched with? So what is added back to the flour? B1, B2, B3, iron, and folate. So for even the poorest eaters among us who are eating Cheez-Its, you're not eating complete crap. You are eating B1, some B1. Now, if you were to look for deficiency, it's kind of unique. The best example I can give for the class is American POWs, so American prisoners in Japanese POW camps in World War II. The Japanese like polished rice. They do like to eat other things with their rice, but what prisoners would get mostly in those camps was very little bit of polished white rice. When you polish rice, you remove the bran on the outside, so you go from brown rice to white rice. You pretty much strip all the B1. And so what you develop is a deficiency disease called beriberi. And beriberi can either be a disease where you have a lot of edema, like swelling everywhere, or just wasting, like severe thinning of the body. We don't see beriberi much anymore, again, because, Cheez-Its have B1. Not an attack on Cheez-Its in any way. What we see in America is Wernicke-Korsakoff. If you abuse alcohol, it actually drives some pathways that use a lot of B1. So alcoholics can be at risk for not just using up they're not eating a lot of food because they're over consuming alcohol versus food. And B, the alcohol makes the body burn through the B1 quicker. Wernicke is very classic. It's having a difficult memory or a foggy memory and an inability to stand up straight or walk straight, a staggered gait. That's the term they use. By the way, for Wernicke-Korsakoff patients, the ER treatment is patient put on gurney, patient provided IV bag loaded with B1, and that's what you do. You flood the body with B1. All right. So again, you will see this for most of the time. You don't see B1 deficiency. It is water soluble. It's really hard to develop toxicity. You will pee it out. You don't need supplements. It's in everything. And here are some good sources. B2 is also an energy vitamin. It's actually very hard to get B2 deficiency. I believe, some tuberculosis drugs can cause B2 deficiency. The reason why we like teaching B2, though, is because it has really cool deficiency symptoms. One of them is kind of this reddishness around the mouth area, and the tongue can actually turn. This looks red, but it could also actually turn magenta, like purplish. And then patients can develop photophobia. That's you get that when you have conjunctivitis. That's extreme pain from bright light. Will you see B2 deficiency for those of you going into sports and medicine? Unlikely. It's in Cheez-Its, it's in saltine crackers, it's in the orange crackers you get from the vending machine, right? The ones that have the weird peanut butter on the inside. You cannot develop toxicity, and it pretty much you don't need supplements. And if you just eat most foods, you're going to find B2. Which foods have the most, though? Oddly enough, it's dairy products. Dairy are a very good source of B2, riboflavin. And since riboflavin, by the way, is very susceptible to light, it will break down when exposed to light. That is one of the reasons, not the only reason, but that is one of the reasons when you close your refrigerator door, and as a 10-year-old or a 9-year-old or a 6-year-old, I tested this, the light does go off. Remember, nutrients, organic ones, break down when exposed to air, heat, light, and pretty much water. So we like to keep things dry, keep things in the dark, keep things at room temperature, and keep things sealed. And last but not least, one of my favorite vitamins, because it has a cool story, is niacin. So niacin deficiency is typically from folks who are not eating a varied diet. And in America, you would see niacin deficiency in the 1910s, 1920s, 19, the turn of the century, 1890s. In the South, during the wintertime when poor folks in the South, farmers, people who didn't have a lot of resources, would pretty much move to a corn diet, processed corn, like cornmeal. Corn has niacin, but it's actually not available when you eat corn. You have to do something to the corn. You have to take the corn meal, dried corn, add ashes to it, like juniper, which is a plant, or lye, same stuff they put around a baseball diamond, and you mix that in with the cornmeal. And this is the old school way to make a tortilla, Native American fry bread. And when you do that, the alkali of the ash breaks the niacin bond and becomes available. But if you're not doing that, you're trying to live off, you'll develop pellagra. And pellagra is a horrific disease. I think I have an image right. Where is that image of my? There. So here it is. So in pellagra, you start to develop a dermatitis all over the body. It's a scaly, purpley dermatitis, along with diarrhea, along with dementia, and then eventually the person dies. And back in the turn of the century, 1900s, thousands of people would die from pellagra every year, and they didn't realize it was just eating a very poor B3 nutrient diet. And of course, what would happen if people did get pellagra? They would probably consider them sick, put them in an isolation ward, and give them the easiest food to eat, a porridge of like corn, so making it worse. Do we see pellagra today? We don't. By the way, Native Americans did not suffer from pellagra. The Mesoamericans, the Aztecs, the Incans, the Mayans, they did not suffer from pellagra, even though they ate a ton of corn, because they mixed their cornmeal with ash, right? Interesting. You can get toxicity of niacin. Again, niacin is one of the energy vitamins. You can get toxicity. And you don't have to eat a lot of niacin to develop toxicity. Even an energy drink can cause flushing and a scratchy itchiness around the body. That's called the flush. That's not bad. That is a temporary kind of blip, if you will, of toxicity. What we worry about are folks taking high doses of niacin for a long period of time. Why would you take a large dose of niacin? There's this one weird side effect of niacin. It raises your good cholesterol. And there really aren't any drugs, like medical drugs, that do that. Raise your good cholesterol. So people do take it to do so, those who have genetically low good cholesterol. The problem is if you're taking niacin, you have to have periodically a blood test to ensure that your liver function is not messed up. Your liver function test. So, yeah, very interesting. Okay, so that's it on the energy vitamins.